comic book junkies, it's the Frog Queen here, and today I have the amazing privilege to interview my favorite writer, Peter Milligan. Today we are talking about The Prisoner, published by Titan Comics, and a little bit about the third story arc of Britannia, published by Valiant Comics. We start off talking about a lot of things having to do with the nature of the brain, and we do get a little bit real and personal, which is still my favorite part about my interviews. The next issue of The Prisoner will be available at a local comic shop near you on May 23rd, so add it to your pull list because you will not be disappointed. Before we get on to the interview, please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you know my name. So let's get on with the interview.
How are things with you?
Yeah, good. I mean, not bad, not bad. I've got my normal epilepsy medication stuff. I think we was talking about it all moves in slow motion. If sometimes it seems I'm always talking about the same thing, it's because the same thing's always happening. It all happens slowly. You change the medication and you kind of reorder. One of my medications was a bit high, so I had to lower that and add something else. But it all takes fucking a long time, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing a neurologist later tonight. Actually, I'm seeing him for a drink, actually. Well, he's kind of like, I've known him for quite a while, and so we said we'll go out for a drink. And I'll have to be, but I can't really ask him, I can't really ask him about medical matters. It's like going for a drink with the doctor. It's like, my back really hurts. So I have to kind of I might keep the subject off of my health.
Yeah.
Particularly private, because normally when I go and ask him about my health, I'll pay him money. So
you could pay for his drinks, I guess.
I will pay for his drink. I don't know. Yeah, I think that maybe gives me one sentence.
Yeah, my partner's just seeing a new neurologist now because he has extensive nerve damage in his face and in his head.
Is that from an accident?
Yeah.
He? I think it's he.
Yeah. So the neurologist, he's had like 6 different surgeries over the past years, and this neurologist wants to try something completely different to freeze the nerves in the back of his spine.
Yeah.
Like shoot drugs into them. Kind of freeze it. It's like a steroid.
Is it a temporary thing?
It's a test to see what happens when they do that, and then if they do that and it neutralizes certain pain, then they'll go in and actually cut the nerves.
Is it a kind of neuralgic pain he's getting? Kind of like across his cheek.
Through here, because this part of his cheekbone is gone.
So what happened, Amy?
He was mugged years ago by 3 men. Just walking downtown at like 7 p.m. Like not even like really downtown.
You were in Nova Scotia, weren't you?
Yes, yeah.
In Nova Scotia?
Yeah, but I mean a city. It's still a city, right?
Yeah.
Stuff happens. It's not crime free.
Yeah, but I've lived in London all my life. I've never been mugged.
Yeah, we had a problem about 7 years ago where they think it was a group of youths. Were just going around and mugging people and beating them, and they hit a person basically every 2-3 weeks for a year. It was crazy, and they never caught them either because they just stopped and disappeared.
Maybe they grew up and got jobs.
Could have been, but it is the group and it was happening, and the police had been reporting on it. The media was convinced that it was like the same people repeatedly because of the areas.
Was it a racial thing?
No. Like, I mean, none of the apparently it was just white guys beating up white guys. Like, they thought
that's crime, huh?
Yeah, it's just sick, really. Just
yeah, it's no good, is it? It's no good.
But anyway, the damage is bad.
Yeah. So what? So he's still got this issue, but it break his cheekbone, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, he was in bad shape. He was in the hospital for a long time. But yeah, they broke his cheekbone and fractured his skull in multiple places. I think there was like over 30 fractures, and
Oh.
um,
Any
all
brain
this.
damage?
Uh, so, some short-term memory loss. I mean, he has permanent migraine now that they're trying to relieve because his entire skull has been reformed and it's smaller, so his
Je-
brain has less room.
Jesus.
So
And you stuck by him, did you? Did you consider dumping him at that point? But
no.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
You're so mean. Anyway.
You're no fun anymore. I mean, actually, something that happened to your partner. People do get epilepsy from things like that. I mean, those kind of traumas.
Yeah.
And look, I don't want to be the voice of doom, but there's no neurologist would say it's impossible. Then in a year or 2 years' time, he may get but they'll deal with that.
Yeah, there's always something new. This happened what 7 years ago, I think, maybe 8, 7. I
Oh,
think 7. So,
a long time ago.
yeah. So it's trial and error. What they thought would work with the surgery and stuff didn't so much work. They kind of messed it up a couple times, and
I talk from experience, Amy. That anything to do with the brain is always trial and error. Because
yeah,
I was once had an appointment with my neurologist. The guy I'm seeing tonight, and but the first 4 questions, why I like him, he would say, "I don't know." He didn't try to bullshit. He doesn't try to kind of, and about the first 4 questions, kind of like he said, "Well, I don't know. I can't say it." Then we both laughed. He said, "I'm sorry. He said, "I'm sorry. This sounds terrible. Like you come here and like everything I'm asking him, you just can't say definitively." 'Cause you
yeah.
can't-
It's true. They just don't know enough about the brain, and they don't even know enough about how, like, your spine connects to your brain and how all that way works, It's
There's this thing called a vagus nerve stimulator, which is a little thing which is put in a bit like a pacemaker, but it shoots these electric shocks up into the brain. Sometimes epileptics, they hold something against their neck and it shoots these when they feel the seizures coming, and in some cases it stops the seizure generalizing, turning into a convulsive seizure, or they just have a number of shocks, like 4 or 5 times a day, into the brain, the part of the brain where seizure is originating from, and it decreases the severity or the number of the seizures. But they don't know why it works. But
of course.
it just does. So they think, well, fuck it, we'll do it.
Yeah. Are you gonna try that?
Well, no, it doesn't really look. It's only for a certain kind of epilepsy.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's very interesting because I'm in the epilepsy world. There's this young woman who goes to my mic and a meeting, and she was offered surgery because she has some really weird. Her seizures take the form of she'll suddenly start picking at her clothes, stand up, walk around the room, and leave the room.
Yeah.
She's completely conscious of what's happening, but she has absolutely no control over it.
Wow.
Yeah, and so she has this called a partial complex seizure. And she was offered a surgery, and I think she didn't have the guts to do it. And I think you can't blame her because it's a big deal having open up your brain
Yeah.
and taking stuff out because they can never be completely sure what they're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, even with this surgery, if the injections work with Chris, he said no more surgery ever again because they cause so much extra damage on top of it, right? With one of the last surgery they had, they screwed up. And he ended up in the ICU for 11 days and on a breath machine and everything with a tube down his throat. So he was just...
What is ICU?
Intensive care unit.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, he was forced into a coma for several days. He was in there for 11 days on a breathing tube.
Oh,
and, it was very traumatizing. He said, like, when he woke up, he's alone, like, it's just,
I think you have to balance how bad your life is. If you're having seizures and if you're having 10 seizures a day and you have absolutely no life, then you might, I'm going to take a chance. if you have one seizure or something which you still have a life, you still have a wonderful partner, and you still you can still work.
Yeah.
And you might think,
Yeah.
you know what, I'll just settle for this.
I mean, it still impacts his day to day. Like, he's still not functional most days of the week. So, he's got like a couple hours of functionality most days, and then he can have a couple really good days in a row, and that's kind of the thing. It's like, it's not really gotten better over the years, and so that's why we're just trying something else. But we, of course, more surgery, we were like, would think very, very hard on, he said, before he considers it.
Yeah, because there's always a hope that there's going to be some kind of a breakthrough.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I thought, inject. I mean, some kind of drugs. Actually, I know that some epilepsy drugs they also use for neuralgic pain across the face.
Okay.
But I'm sure that these neurologists kind of,
Probably, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, good luck anyway with that.
Yeah.
Does Chris work? Can he work?
Yeah, he works from home. Does graphic design.
Oh, right. So it's the kind of work where if he feels tired, he can just rest up.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
More on his own schedule. Yeah.
That's really good. Okay. So,
right. Now that we stop talking about medical brain stuff.
I know. That's how often we talk about, maybe because so much of my life and quite a few of my stories are about brain stuff.
Yeah. I agree.
I guess even Legion. I know I didn't create that character, but the reason why I was interested in doing it was because it dealt with all that kind of stuff. And I remember you had that friend, didn't you? Had another personality.
Mm-hmm.
A girlfriend.
Yeah.
If you remember.
My friend, yes, I do have a friend who has multiple personalities. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's no laughing matter, is it? I bet.
It's bizarre, yeah. It's and like, yeah, like you do have that constant feeling like, is this real?
Yeah.
Or am I being played? I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I still think that, but I've just come to accept it.
No, I bet you there was two. I bet kind of like on one level you knew it was for real. Another level you couldn't quite shake. You were thinking, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. So how's the world of comics for you up there?
Oh, good.
Your business?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Gutter Magic.
Gutter Magic, I would say in London. Gutter Magic.
Yeah. Actually, Alison Sampson, I don't know if you know her.
I'm just working with Alison, actually. So
that's right. I forgot. With
yeah. I've never met her, but we're doing this thing together. She's great. Artwork's fantastic.
She named my business.
Well, I like it.
G-Mom.
Do you know her personally?
Yeah, we've talked a lot. I mean, we've not met in person, but we've talked a lot over the years. And
what's she like, honestly?
Oh, she's lovely. I love her. She's brilliant too. She's was an architect, right? So she was an architect who had a love of art and comics, and then moved into comics. I met her after she put out Genesis. I think that was her first Image comic, and we talked extensively about Genesis when it came out. But then we just kept talking, and we've always kind of, kept in contact. And she's the one who was like telling me to start this business. She's the big pusher for me.
Remind me what it is again. It's when you kind of people who are really busy, you deal with other sides of their life.
Yeah, exactly. So operations management and dealing with kind of like the stuff that keeps comic book creators now, especially people who are doing creator-owned stuff. It's, they're kind of their own PR, their own marketing, like their own like events coordinator. They just kind of do everything. And it takes up so much time. So like it's actually eating away at their creative time.
For sure.
And it's like, how valuable is doing all those extra things yourself? If you could pay somebody not a lot of money to do it for you.
How do you monetize it?
What's that?
How do you monetize this? Do you have a flat rate? Do you kind of...
Oh, yeah, I just do like a monthly rate.
Do you have that term, monetize?
monetize, I think.
Or money to rise.
Yeah.
Rise, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you make money out of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I just have a flat rate. So my rate is like depending on what people are looking for, because some people just want me to like do the marketing stuff and do like the online promotion and then contact stores and make sure stores are ordering their like pre-ordering their comics
So
and
say
stuff
I
like
did a
that.
book for an Image, and I said, "All right then, I'm really busy. Amy, just deal with stuff for me, like not creative stuff, not editing stuff, just marketing, pushing it,
Yeah.
social media platforms, whatever." You'd have a flat rate, and you'd say, "Okay, Peter."
Yeah. Like I developed a database of like every comic shop in North America, and then I'm going to develop another one for like Europe as well, but I haven't gotten to that one yet. Because I used to work for Magnetic Press,
Uh-huh.
that publisher, so I've done like a lot of like that behind the scenes stuff before. So yeah, I developed these big kind of shops. I'll do like direct store outreach to like all the big shops, and make sure that they're ordering things, and then I'll have a big database of media contacts. So then I'll contact people, individual editors, and be like, can you run an article about this upcoming issue? We want like something just before it comes out, like a preview, or that kind of article, like build hype and get pre-orders in.
I think there's a real market for that, because that is one of the. First thing, I've only done one thing for Image, but it's just everything that you normally like the company takes care of.
Yeah.
In between, there's just so much stuff.
Yeah.
So, and okay then. So now.
Okay. So
By the way, the same procedure in Europe. I said to someone, I'm talking to someone. I'm Skyping tomorrow. Someone called Amy Brander, and he said, "Oh, the Frog Queen."
Oh, yay!
So.
Who was it? Now I want to know.
Okay, it was Chris Thompson.
Oh yes, I love him.
The Aussie from
brand manager for
Titan. Yeah, he's a good guy. So yeah,
he's lovely. I follow him as well.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. But yeah, I've got The Prisoner here. I read it a couple days ago.
Okay.
And of course it just came out yesterday, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know. I have so many books on the go. I don't remember when it came out.
I think Wednesday. Yes, it's Thursday, so yesterday must be Wednesday.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had never seen The Prisoner, the television show. I actually tried to find it yesterday just so I could have a taste of it.
So was this the first thing you knew about The Prisoner?
Yes.
Exactly. So you were reading it pure. You were reading it fresh.
Yeah, exactly. And modern.
I wouldn't go that far. But yeah, okay, well that's interesting, because I think because actually I was talking to when I saw Chris Thompson last night for a pint, along with this Spanish penciler, an artist called Guillermo Ortega, who's a really good guy, but he'd never seen it as a kid either. So it's just quite interesting. Obviously, not the entire planet didn't see it, of course, but I thought that everyone in North America.
Well, I tried to think back, because I know that it was broadcasted by I think the Canadian, like CBC, the Canadian Broadcast Company, and I was trying to think back when I was a kid if I'd ever caught it on CBC, because we didn't have very many channels back then. We only had like a few channels of television, and I'm like, I could have caught it on like a rerun or something like that on CBC, and when as I was reading it, I was like, this sounds actually quite familiar, and so I had to go and I looked up the television show. I couldn't find any of it to watch, but I looked up and read about it, and I was like, this is starting to, because the fact that he's like stuck in the village
At the end.
Yeah, ringing true to me, and I was like, okay, no, this does kind of ring a bell. And I was like, had I seen this maybe as a child? I'm not sure. I couldn't find any of it.
May have done it. This comic might have dislodged a memory that was lying dormant in your.
Yeah, and especially like when I read that the original people, or when the original captors or the prisoners were called numbers, they were gone by numbers.
That was the big thing. I mean, the first series was very much about, I guess, being not a number in a society. It was very. It came from a '60s ethos. It
Yeah.
was kind of. It was Franz Kafka meets '60s ethos in some ways. I think, at its best. He had the paranoia of Kafka with that sort of '60s ethos of, I'm an individual and I am not a number.
Mm-hmm.
Or cog in the machine. I think that it's very reductive level. I think that's what it was about. Um,
Yeah.
this is not quite exactly the same as that, but we do pay lip service to it a little bit. For example, when we see our guy changing identities, where I think I was suggesting there that's how shifting identities can actually be. So in some ways, that's gone against the original TV series, where so much of it was about I'm a man. I think we're saying here we're questioning what indeed a man is, what indeed a person is.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting. Also, with that he shifts his identity because it's also removing trust, your trust in that character. Whenever you, well, for me, when I see a character
Yeah,
who's
deliberately so, because I think that he's lost his trust in the world. He's lost his trust in the things which he once fought and worked for. So to even lose your trust in who you are is kind of it's just adding to that whole sense of shifting, tectonic plates moving and being unsure, being in a world of uncertainty. Hence the title.
yeah,
Uncertainty.
the uncertainty machine. Yeah, I really like that also. Um, in the original series, you never get to know the character's actual real name, right? Is that true? Or
Yeah, yeah.
your character, has a name, Breen, right?
In the TV series, you don't know much about the character at all. It's all kind of like hinted at. It's hinted that he was some kind of spy. I wanted to kind of take it back. I'm a big fan of the spy novels of John le Carré,
Okay.
who was just fantastic. I mean, he's kind of like a major British literary force. But his first breakout novel was back in the early '60s. It was a novel called The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. You've probably seen the film. The film was with Richard Burton. And it was fantastic. But the book was just really brilliant about that East and West. It's about this spy who was quite burnt out, and it was some kind of big sting operation, and just the mood that he caught, and the characterization, and just the themes were so fantastic. And I've always been a fan of that. And I wanted to be like the comic to start as if it was a modern retelling of that kind of story. But as this person gets closer to the village, the surreal nature of the village story starts to, if you like, to infect, and there starts to be almost like contagion of the spy story, so that eventually our guy and the story itself is sucked towards this other genre and this other world.
Yeah, and that's what I thought from the beginning to the end of your book, of your comic. I found it interesting because the concept of the village is like, is it a real place or is it a state of being? Like, there's a mythos about it when they talk about it in the beginning of the issue, and I'm like, what is it exactly? Like, is it a place in your mind? Is it a collective of people?
Good questions. Good questions. Questions I've got no intention of answering right now.
Of course, yeah.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's like, is this place real? Am I real? Is my identity real? Is what I fight for real? Is what I believe in real? What is real? What can be said today in this world? What can be said to be real?
I question reality all the time. That's why all these kinds of stories that do that, they always play with my mind because
So, are you sure that this conversation is actually happening?
Oh, not at all.
No. I've started to doubt it by the minute, actually.
Yeah. It's getting less and less likely every moment. I wanted to ask you actually too about you have this wonderful intro at the very beginning of the issue about the 21st century, and it says the global currency is no longer oil or gold, but information. And because I haven't read the original story, I don't know what bearing that has to the original story.
It has none, really. I was trying to
Okay.
put it in the modern, in the issues of the modern world.
Okay. And I couldn't tell if like this story takes place in current modern day or some time way in the future. Like
Oh, really?
I
Oh,
honestly wasn't sure. Like
I,
there was the
I think,
references to current politics that
yeah.
I understood, but I mean, I was like that could be going on forever for all I know.
That's interesting, if anything, because the mood I was after was a kind of the spiral coming from the cold, which was kind of Cold War. I thought you were going to say I couldn't tell whether it was in the past, but no, it's meant to be contemporary,
Okay.
or
Cool.
maybe tomorrow. You know, but it's kind of like it's as near as now as damn it.
Okay. And I think that's interesting because um, the whole fact that information is kind of currently the global currency in a way is very like now because we see like what's happening in the United States where they're locking down access to information on the internet all over the place with net neutrality being
Yeah,
not a thing.
and I wrote this before. I wrote this before the big Cambridge Analytics came out, and all of that stuff. And it seems to be that it's a very kind of like cogent and important and key aspect. It's the signature key of the age, perhaps.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's something I never thought would happen in my lifetime, but it's happening.
Yep.
I also wanted to ask about some of the imagery because again, the imagery in the book goes from this very serious reality to reality breaking, and then it looking very like fantastic, kind of, or
Yeah.
surreal.
As yes, as that does happen. As excuse me, as 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 our guy gets closer to the village, the village starts to infect him. There's a sense. That as you get closer to this place, things start to break down a little bit. And if you like, it's almost as though the idea of the village or the reality of the village has infects the world the closer you get to it. It was just I liked that.
Which makes me think that yeah, the village isn't actually a physical place. I'm dreaming of him in like some kind of tank hooked up to a computer. That's what I'm thinking in my head, you know.
Okay.
Because it's so mental. Like anyway,
Mental, but not much happens that can't physically happen. So even though it's
it's true.
even though kind of, I mean, look, what happens in the first storyline that physically could not happen?
I guess it's the imagery, like when he goes to get Pandora's box, I guess. And there's that big swirling room of.
Well, I think that's just a way of meaning that you can only get close to this important bit of information if you know the code and if you know the layout of the stars, which everyone who should be able to get there should know on every single day. But of course, if you don't know, you fall down and you die. So it's just like an extreme way. Yes, it's a bit extreme. And is it likely that British intelligence uses something like that? Probably not. But I think it's heightened reality rather than surreality.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know. I wasn't sure how to interpret that
Right.
page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Oh, well, it was just I wanted something which was visually interesting. I wanted something to show just how important this thing Pandora is, and how to what lengths and what technologies British intelligence use to mean that only the people who should get there can get there.
cool.
So
Cool. No, it's great. It totally makes sense. But I needed an explanation because I wasn't sure. Because like I said, I was going all sci-fi in my head.
But it's a bit sad. I guess is that why you thought it might be in the future?
Kind of, because
Huh?
I was getting a lot of sci-fi vibes, and I couldn't tell if they were like if it like you said, like if it was reality in the story, or if it's more like
Okay. Apart from that moment, I mean, everything else. I mean, there's the guy playing chess in the toilets.
yes, yeah.
That's possible. That's possible. He could be imagining it,
Hmm.
or it could be actually happening. I mean, who hasn't gone to public conveniences and seen someone play chess?
This never happened to me.
Really? Really? Wow, you just.
Is that
Well,
maybe it's a British thing? Is it a British thing?
I thought, come on, really? I'm really surprised.
I'm totally, yeah, no, never.
So in American toilets, they're playing baseball or something, or
Canadian toilets.
toilets,
No.
maybe they're playing bridge. You know.
Most, maybe I think it's just like they're either people are using the washroom or trying to pick up.
No, I'm fucking with you. It's obviously it's complete. It's I wanted a little. I wanted a little bit of the surreal in there, just to kind of almost as a as a precursor of the kind of world that he's going to be edging towards.
Cool. Awesome. How many issues is this going to be? It doesn't actually say on the press release, and I
You
was
know,
like, how long is this going on
It's either
for?
4 or 5. I forget.
Okay.
I know it's absurd. I think 4.
Have you written it all? Like, have you finished
Yeah,
the
but I
entire
still
story?
forget. I could find out, but it would be me looking to my computer. And no, I think let's say it's 4. But if it's not, I'll email you and tell you.
Okay. No
Okay?
worries.
I think it's 4, but then I'm just kind of like mapping out an idea for a second storyline as we speak.
Oh, excellent. Cool.
Not as we speak. Yeah, that would be different again, you know, but
Difficult.
different again. Not difficult. Well, difficult is good. I mean, what's life if it isn't difficult?
Yeah, I still don't see you writing a story and talking to me at the same time, but
No, well, who knows? Who knows?
yeah. Oh, I wanted to ask you, since you're writing a second storyline for The Prisoner, you're also finished the third storyline for Britannia, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've written first drafts of every script. Then I like to wait for a bit if I have that possibility, and then to go back and then do a rewrite. Some particularly with a kind of a detective story where you might want to stress something a little bit more. Once you've written it all, might want to go back and stress something or highlight something a bit more or drop in something. So it works as a detective kind of story. So I'm at that stage now, but the first 2 are completely done. I think I'm just kind of like tidying up the third one and the fourth. So it's all in good shape. I think it's a good story. We explore a different part of the Roman world. I was interested that in the first storyline, we see the northernmost part of the Roman Empire, which is Britannia, which is here, and so I was interested in that, and the kind of that it would have been seen as like the far edge of civilization for them, and for a Roman, because beyond there is nothing. The second storyline was set in Rome, it was set in the gladiatorial arena and Aquileia. So then we get into Rome. This next storyline, the third storyline, we go south, or rather east, and we go to Egypt, which is like
Oh.
one of the far parts of the Roman Empire. But it all centers around the eagles. Eagles were a massively important part of Roman culture. The eagles were the standards that the Roman legions used to carry into battle, and they were shaped. They're called an Aquileia, which is Latin for eagle, and as I'm sure you know, and these were really important. They assumed a kind of a symbolic sense of like they symbolized Roman power and Roman identity. So they were much more than just a standard. They became almost religious in the kind of awe that the soldiers and that the people back in Rome viewed them with. So losing one of these was a really big thing. And it happened before that in disastrous battles that the Romans lost, that some eagles were lost, and they went to extraordinary lengths to try to get these eagles back. So the story is based around that sense of how important these eagles are, and yeah.
So,
And so the clues in the title, "The Lost Eagles of Rome." So some to get lost.
right, yeah. I actually I sat down and reread all of Britannia last night before I went to bed. So I had Roman. What's that?
The first two storylines.
Yes, yeah.
Cool.
So I had dreams of Rome last night.
Good. Oh, good. I like that idea. Were they good dreams?
I got to have a sword, so you can't really go
You weren't
wrong.
the lions or anything.
No, there's no lions at all.
Have you
I was
been
more
to
just dealing with I don't even think I was Roman. I think I was like an opposition of Rome in the dream. It was really bizarre.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But I
Interesting.
had a sword, so it
Well, hey,
was cool.
yeah, so that's not bad, is it?
Yeah, I usually have a sword in my dreams anyway, but
When you say Rome, were you seeing Rome as you imagine Rome to have been, or Rome as Rome is now?
no, as like ancient Rome. Yeah. Even like I mean, of course I've never been to Rome, modern day Rome. So
Can I ask? Have you not? I don't know.
No, I haven't. I've never been overseas that far. Like I've just stayed on North America. I keep really wanting to leave and go visit all the places over there.
Come to Europe.
Yes, I really want to. I'm hoping this year,
Okay.
next year, it'll
Would
happen.
that be to a comic convention or something?
Yeah, I want to go to Leeds really badly, and there's quite a few. But anyways, yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to ask though, with Britannia, because you know I've always taken like a big interest in ancient Rome and especially ancient Egypt. So I'm really excited to read the next storyline because ancient Egypt was a huge thing for me as a child.
Oh, really?
Oh, I loved it. I've just
Okay.
written tons of books on Egypt.
Okay.
But I get lost in like the timeline of Rome, when they took over certain areas and stuff like that. Although I know some of the Roman and Egyptian kind of wars or takeovers or whatever,
Yeah.
and Greece and all that stuff, like the timeline is kind of bizarre to me, and I can't tell when Britannia's taking place.
Well, it's in the time of Nero, which would be about 60 AD.
Okay.
So it's a few generations after Julius Caesar and Cleopatra and all that lot.
Okay.
And it was around about that time, obviously, the Romans were kind of in control of Egypt. So
Yeah.
Egypt's been a Roman possession for quite a few years, and it was a really important one. It was known as the breadbasket of Rome because so much corn was grown, and oil as well. But mainly corn was grown in Egypt and then sent over to Rome, from which they made bread. And bread was very important for Rome. Bread in circuses, the famous line goes. Bread means you could eat.
Right. Yeah. And there's people all in Britannia eating bread a lot, actually.
Really? Well, bread was important for them because look, this is a staple diet: bread and wine. It goes all the way back to the Bible. In Greece, and bread, olives, wine, tobacco. That was. And this in Britain, obviously, it would be at that time. It would be beer or mead, and I guess some kind of bread. But yeah.
I'm curious. Like, of course, Rome doesn't have like a terribly, or ancient Rome, or ancient anything doesn't have a terribly like good reputation because they're always conquering and destroying other civilizations or taking them over, or whatever. But your detectioner, he doesn't seem particularly fond of Rome as a Roman, and I'm wondering why you chose to make your main character so anti-Roman and basically not a patriot at all.
Well, look, the idea is this comes from a time when well, what I wanted initially to make different about Antonius Axia, who was the detection, is that he was taken in by the Vegetable Virgins after his mind was blown in a cave in Tuscany, and he was kind of rebuilt and remodeled by some strange Vegetable Virgin rituals, and get him to read a lot of old text. Yeah, well, of course. I mean, everyone knows about the strange Vegetable Virgin rituals, but anyway, it changed him, and the idea was that in this world where so much of the world was contingent upon rituals, sacrifice, and serving of gods, so that the gods basically wouldn't fuck you up, so would give you what you wanted, and the world was seen, and what happened in the world was seen in the light of how the gods made this happened. So it was very different. So even though a lot of Rome is recognisable to us, the empire building, the building of great cities, the building of aqueducts, all that stuff, we think, okay, then we get there. Even down to like cruel empire building. Well, America does it this century. The British Empire did it last few centuries. So that's very kind of a recognisable modern phenomenon. I wanted Antonius to be different from that, to have a more, if you like, a more modern way of looking at the world. He doesn't believe in the gods. He has a more kind of deductive way of looking at things, an analytical way of looking at things. He's a detective, and it makes him different from the rest of the world. It makes him different from his contemporaries. So I think, therefore, he would be able to stand outside of the normal kind of like flow of Roman life, and perhaps be more critical of it than he would otherwise be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I think so.
Yes. Oh, he's definitely, yes. And he's definitely like a convincing detective, completely in an era when people probably wouldn't have been so critically thinking about anything.
So the whole story is predicated of what if you got this detective who actually thought more like us, and he kind of looked for psychological motivation. He looked for cause and effect. He looked for clues, stuff which would not be the first recourse for the average Joe Roman, who might look up why has the gods been offended? Why was this person who's dead? Was he perhaps not given the right sacrifices or the right rituals to the right gods? Our guy doesn't think that way. Doesn't think that way.
And do you think that's important for him, like integral that he be like not a patriot as well, to also be that kind of forward-thinking person?
I'm not sure he's not a patriot. I think he likes Rome. That was the tension. Okay. There's lots of tensions in Britannia. He likes Rome in that he likes what Rome gives him, like the culture and the wine and. But I think that to have the clarity that he has and to have seen what he's seen, I think that he sees through some of the bad stuff that Rome does, that Rome represents. So I think he's got a more clear view of what's going on in this world. So I don't think he's anti-Rome, but it goes along with everything that Rome does, you know.
Right. So he's not brainwashed by like political propaganda.
No, but I think that I don't think there was active propaganda. I think that people just brought into it. People just brought into the Roman agenda.
Okay.
And it was this thing. And there were some very interesting things about Rome. Obviously, there was lots of slaves. A lot of slaves. But they weren't racist. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, they were psychotic often, but they weren't racist. I mean, slaves could be white, they could be brown, they could be Egyptian, they could be English, they could be African, and a freed person, African, white. There was no sense of inferior races. If you were a Roman citizen, you became a Roman citizen. And a Roman was just as likely, or maybe not just as likely, but could equally be a slave, as a Briton could, as an African could, as a Greek could. So this is an interesting. So even though some of their things, it's an interesting way of. Sometimes they almost come into focus as a modern way of thinking, but then you realise just how ancient these guys actually are.
Yeah, and there's the you show, of course, the relationship between master and slaves, as in for the detectioner. How do you say his last name? Axia?
Antonius Axia.
Axia, yeah. Axia and his Bran, his
Yeah.
slave is also his like best friend in a way.
Yeah, well, I didn't want Antonius to be completely an anachronism in there, to be anti-slavery, and because I think he kind of, because no one was anti-slavery. It wasn't seen as even Spartacus. Those guys, they weren't anti the idea of slavery. They just wanted better rights for slaves. I don't think anyone actually said slavery is a terrible, morally bankrupt idea. We have to change it. No one thought that. It was too big a conceptual leap for these guys to make. And I don't think Antonius makes that leap. I think that he's got a sense. He's got a moral sense of fairness, and he's offered Bran his freedom. But I think Bran's point is always that it's more tax efficient if he stays this guy's slave, and just hangs around with him,
And he's fed and clothed or whatever.
Yeah, but we got the sense that the minute he wants his freedom, Antonius will give it to him.
Right. And I guess that's why he's always says my most loyal slave, and
Being deeply British and ironic.
Yeah, and it's just like slaves are loyal. They have a choice of whether to be loyal.
I think, right, yeah, loyalty suggests a certain kind of a freedom, doesn't it, to be loyal?
Yes, like you're making a choice to be loyal. It's not forced. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like a difference between when I pay my neurologist so I can sit there. When I paid him, he has to be my friend for half an hour. When he comes to have a drink with me, he doesn't have to do that. So then
and then he tells you what he really thinks of you.
I'm really scared now, actually.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine.
No, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's a tame neurologist.
Oh, okay.
I'm really into Britannia. I really like the character. But what I wanted to do was, even though he's a detective, and even though some people say he's a bit like Sherlock Holmes, well, in many ways he's very different. I wanted him to be very different from Sherlock Holmes. I wanted there to be a physicality about Antonius as well. So he's ex-soldier, so he can look after himself. So and he also can fall in love. I think he's both stronger and weaker than Sherlock Holmes. He's stronger because he could get into a sword fight and be okay. He's weaker because he's perfectly capable of making a fool out of himself with a woman.
Yeah.
Which I think is good. So he's human. He's very human.
Yeah, and he seems like he's just taken to falling lustfully in love with every kind of like attractive face that he meets, and he admits that at one point too. He's like, yeah, sure, since my wife died, I've met lots of women. It happens. He has this kind of casual way to talk about it.
Yeah, he's more like Philip Marlowe than Sherlock Holmes, I like to think. He's a guy who kind of who has a moral center, but he's not some kind of like walking a mental computer. He kind of tries to work things out, but partly he works things out on a kind of a empirical, throwing himself in the middle of it and trying to work things out. He's not some refined aesthete like Sherlock Holmes, kind of like looking at things from a detached manner. Antonius isn't detached. He's very attached to the stories and often to the women who are in the stories.
I was going to say also that. Sorry, go ahead.
That plays a very big part in the Lost Eagles of Rome. His relationship with in terms of we really see the morality of him. Achillea is obviously this fantastically good-looking and interesting and tough and scary gladiator woman, and actually. There is a sense that they could have a relationship, but there's also a sense that what we explore in the Lost Eagles of Rome, that Antonius isn't comfortable about having a relationship with a slave, a sexual
Okay.
slave, because however you wrap it up, it's still a sense of compulsion if it's a slave.
Oh, okay.
So we explore that a little bit in the story, the relationship between them. In I like to think that in Britannia, there's lots of like tensions going on. There's a tension between the way that Antonius thinks and the way that the rest of the society thinks. There's a tension also between magic and demons and the dark stuff, and how much of this we see. We never quite openly, overtly show it. It's always kind of hinted. So there's a kind of tension between our reality and this. There's also a tension between Antonius and Aquileia. There's a big tension between Nero and Rubria. Both have different kind of power. Like obviously, Emperor Nero has like temporal, strong military power, but Rubria has a kind of soft power. Like she knows a lot, and she's a high religious figure, so she has a kind of power, and they just about balance each other out. And Nero kind of can't do to her what he'd like to do to her, actually, because she really annoys him. So there's a kind of because she's a very powerful woman. You know, the chief Vestal Virgin had a degree of power.
Was Nero in history like a really terrible like tyrant?
You know, I mean, he has gone down in history as one, as
Okay.
mad. But there are some people who try to kind of clean up his reputation a bit. Apparently, for a little while, I mean, most of those emperors at that time were a pretty kind of wretched lot. I mean, they had absolute power. They were close to being a god. A lot of them made themselves god, and they could do whatever they fucking wanted, and they did. And some of them were more wretched than others. And he probably did go mad to some degree. But who wouldn't go a bit mad if you're an emperor? I mean, look, Prince Charles is a bit mad. I think if he was emperor, God knows what he'd get up to.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, what is it? Absolute power corrupts or something.
Yeah, but they were kind of so his reputation is not good. Let's put it that way. I think he became. He's not as bad as Caligula. But
Yes, Caligula is still like my favorite to read about. Still, just in general, like because it's so insane that I loved it.
Did you see I Claudius on TV, the TV show?
Did I watch that one? I can't remember if I did or not.
You should read the books by Robert Graves. I Claudius.
Okay.
They're fantastic. If you want a glimpse of Rome, I Claudius is a fantastic book. I mean, a lot of these characters, Augustus, some of the women in I Claudius, they're so dreadful. I mean, the scheming, plotting, murderers, poisoning. It's fantastic.
Like the HBO series Rome. Did you see that one?
No, I think. I mean,
that was particularly brutal.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can just focus on that. But I think that because Robert Graves is a great writer, or was a great writer, he can balance it out with some other stuff. But it was fantastically kind of bloody, and because a lot of them were just at each other's throats, jostling for position. You know, as always happens in royal families and royal dynasties. There's you know, like you have kind of children being killed because they might have power, and it's just grotesque. And of course, the grotesque makes endlessly fascinating viewing.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, but I remember the reason why I was interested in Rome. I always kind of preferred Greece as a kind of a place to look at, and philosophically. But when I was a teenager, I found the I Claudius books, and I just like chomped through the number of I Claudius books. There's I Claudius and Claudius the King and Claudius the God, and they are just fantastic.
Oh, I've never read them. I'll have to add them to the list.
Yeah, they inflamed my teenage brain. So.
And then that's why you had to go to Britannia.
It stuck. It always stuck there, and yeah. But then I kind of got more interested in Greece. I think because of the literature. I think, and you know, some of the plays are just fantastic. But then her idea of Greece is slightly less brutal. I think. By our standards, obviously their civilization would have been pretty brutal, and women did not come out very happily in Greece. Like the way women are treated will be seen as very kind of warming, pretty less than we would do, but perhaps more like some other parts of the country's world now. I think that the women's rights are not exactly an issue. But that's another story. That's another interview. So it's been really great talking to you, and I look forward to our next assignation.
Yes. We'll talk again soon. I hope you have a lovely day and lovely drink with your neurologist.
Thanks very much. You're the first person I've told about that.
Well, I wish you luck.
No, well, I'm sure it's going to be okay. But yeah, I will buy the drinks then. Okay. All right. Well, nice to talk to you again, and I'll see you soon.
Yes, for sure. All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Getting over being ill and
Oh yeah, right. You said. Was it flu or was it just a cold?
just a cold. It only lasted for a couple of days. It's just the end.
You know, I think if you've got flu, you really know it.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I haven't had the flu since like the thick of winter, so I was like, this better not be a flu. But it was just like a cold, and it was just crappy for a few days. But I'm really accident prone, and
We have something in common.
in like the last 2 weeks, I have injured my shoulder at the gym, and then I sprained a toe, and I've just been like laid up and unable to do much of anything.
Well, I think a psychologist might say there might be a psychological reason why you are going out of your way to smash your body up.
Oh,
There is some deep-rooted issue there, Amy.
oh no! I hope not. I've just always
I
been.
think you well enough to know, but if you're happy with that, I'm fine.